This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Do you have a point of sale system you can trust, or is it a real POS? You need Shopify for retail. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify POS has everything you need to sell in person. Go to shopify.com/system, all lowercase, to take your retail business to the next level today. That's shopify.com/system.
If you're not subscribed so you can listen ad-free, what are you waiting for? Subscribe on Apple or Patreon so that you can listen ad-free and get access to our subscription-only journal entry episodes. Thanks so much to those of you who are already subscribed. Your support keeps the Murder Diaries running.
Welcome to the Murder Diaries. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Paige.
This is part 2 of the unsolved murder of Scott Guy. If you haven't listened to episode 1 yet, go ahead and do that first. Then come back here as we dive into the trial and aftermath of Scott's death. We explore the legal battle, the shocking revelations that followed, and the lasting impact on both his family and the community. Just to briefly revisit the case, we're going to back up and give a quick recap. Scott Guy was found shot to death at the end of his driveway in a rural area of New Zealand. Now, the investigation didn't turn up many leads. That is until Scott's brother-in-law, Wynne, was linked to several acts of vandalism, some of which took place in Scott's home that was being built. Police took these acts of vandalism as proof that Wynne was responsible for Scott's murder, so they arrested him.
Used to think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
On April 7, 2011, Wynne McDonald was charged with the murder of Scott Guy, his brother-in-law, and he entered a plea of not guilty. He was also charged in relation to the vandalism committed with Callum, a former friend and employee. And for those charges, he actually did plead guilty. However, he wouldn't be sentenced on these charges until after the murder trial. As for Wynne's wife, Anna, she was blindsided by everything. She had no idea that Wynne was the one who vandalized Scott and Kylie's house, and she never suspected that he would be arrested for her brother's murder. The day after Wynne was arrested, Scott and Anna's father, Brian, spoke to the New Zealand Herald. He said that there had been some animosity between Wynne and Scott in the past, but he really thought everything had been resolved. He went on to say that the arrest had been difficult on Anna and her 4 kids, because she had to explain to them that their father was accused of killing their uncle. She also told her kids that their dad didn't do it. Brian went on to tell the Herald that the family wants to believe that Wynne is innocent. He said that they could just not fathom Wynne being responsible for something like this, saying that's not Wynne. We can't imagine he would do such a thing. He's facing some other charges, he's made some bad choices in the past, but we can't imagine that he would do that. Wynne's first court appearance was hard on the family, with Brian saying that it was harder than the day of Scott's murder. They just never thought it would be a family member arrested. They thought it would be a stranger standing in that courtroom. Brian later said that he had thought of the possibility of Wynne being involved because of the previous contention between him and Scott. However, Wynne's reaction to the murder seemed genuine to Brian. He said, but every time I thought of his reaction, I thought, no, that can't be right. His reactions all the way through, he's either innocent or he's very, very good. If he is guilty, he must be ill. He must be sick. He hasn't shown that he's had any remorse. There's been nothing like that. Anna visited Wynne in jail often. She asked him the tough questions, and throughout their visits, Wynne maintained his innocence, even going so far as promising Anna that he didn't have anything to do with Scott's death. He did, however, admit to her that he was behind the vandalism, saying that he was annoyed that Scott seemed to go home to his wife and kids whenever he wanted, whereas he worked long hours and barely saw his family. But it was all too much for Anna. And in January of 2012, she told Wynne that their marriage was over. Brian spoke to police after Wynne's arrest, and he did admit that he had moved the farm shotgun after Scott's death. He told them that he put it in the safe where it should have been kept, but when he found it, it was in 3 parts in the office and not in the safe. He went on to say that he regretted not being honest with the police and testified saying the following: "Knowing that Scott had possibly been shot, I was particularly conscious of unlocked firearms. Brian also added that he wasn't sure why he thought Scott had been shot, but it's possible that someone at the scene led him to believe that.
After Ewan entered his not guilty plea, both the prosecution and the defense began to prepare for the trial.
The prosecution began to try to connect Ewan to the evidence found at the murder scene. They said that the footprints left in the mud were left by Ewan, made by a pair of dive boots that he wore when he went hunting. The boots, purchased around 2006, were never found, and the prosecution argued that Ewan had disposed of them after the murder. However, Anna testified at the trial that the last time she saw the boots was in 2008, as they were getting ready to move. And since one of them was damaged, she threw them out. Investigators excavated parts of the land where Ewan was living. They were trying to find the dive boots, the puppies, the shotgun shells, and more. But they didn't find anything related to Scott's murder. Meanwhile, the defense went through the case file and tried to make a timeline based on what the prosecution said had happened. And according to that case file, the earliest that Scott could have been killed was 4:43 a.m., a couple minutes after he stopped using the computer. Ewan was a mile away, unlocking the workshop at 5:02, 19 minutes later. One attorney told Stuff, "To this day, I have no idea how they actually think he did it. Second by second. What time did he get up? How did he avoid Anna waking up? What time did he get up there? Did he kill the puppies before or after? Why would he cycle back along the main road? Why weren't there any bike tracks? Tell me how he could do it." 4:43 a.m. was the earliest Scott would have left his house, but he didn't need to be at work until 4:50. And as I've said before, it was a 1-minute drive away, so it's possible he left later than that and did a few other things before leaving the house. On June 6, 2012, the trial began. And because Fielding is so small and there was so much pretrial publicity around the case, the trial was moved to Wellington, the capital city, over an hour away. The case was of great interest to the media and the public, with Stuff reporting that people were lining up to get a seat in the gallery. And at the height of the trial, 100 people were vying for a spot inside the courtroom.
Many people took the stand for the prosecution and the defense, but one absence was Ewan. He had spoken to the police for more than 40 hours and didn't have anything new to add, so he didn't testify at the trial. It's not uncommon for people not to take the stand in their own defense, and it really depends on the circumstances. In this case, the defense didn't think Ewan taking the stand was crucial.
So it's a new year, 2025, and you're thinking, how am I going to make this year different? How am I going to build something for myself? I'm so excited to be my own boss or see if I can turn this business idea I've been kicking around into a reality, but I really don't know how to make it happen. Well, Shopify is how you're going to make it happen, and Paige is going to tell you how.
You guys, the best time to start that business you've been dying to start is now. Shopify makes it so easy and simple for you to create your brand, open up that business, and get your first sale. Get your store up and running easily with literally thousands, and I mean thousands, of customizable templates. You don't have to do any coding or have any design skills previously to be able to do this. It's so easy. All you need is to know how to drag and drop, copy paste, baby. It's so easy. Their powerful social media tools help you connect your channels and create shoppable posts that help you sell everywhere and keep your shoppers scrolling. Shopify makes it easy to manage your growing business by helping you with details like shipping, taxes, payments, all from one single dashboard, allowing you to focus on the important stuff, like growing your business. Act now so that you don't regret not starting that business later. It's Q1 of 2025, baby. Let's go.
Established in 2025 has a nice ring to it, doesn't it? Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/murderdiaries, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/murderdiaries to start selling with Shopify today.
That's shopify.com/murderdiaries.
Okay, we all know how this goes. New Year's resolutions, right? Every year we make grand plans to be better versions of ourselves, work out more, eat healthier, read more books. But then comes the reality. You know, dragging yourself out of bed at 6 a.m. when it's still pitch black outside, only to hit snooze 5, maybe 8 more times. Trust me, I've been there. But you know what's different? The resolutions that stick are the ones that are automatic. like investing with Acorns. Today's episode is sponsored by Acorns. Acorns rounds up your everyday purchases to the nearest dollar and invests that change for you effortlessly. It's like setting yourself up for success without the effort. That's what Acorns does for your financial future. It's one small change that makes a difference. Acorns makes it easy to start automatically saving and investing so your money has a chance to grow for you, your kids, and your retirement. You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that fits you and your money goals. You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you invest with the spare money you've got right now. It lets you invest automatically by rounding up your everyday purchases and putting that change to work. It's a simple way to keep building toward your financial goals without extra effort. And for me, it's been a great addition to my routine, and it might be worth checking out if you're looking for an easy way to get started. Head to acorns.com/diaries or download the Acorns app to start saving and investing for your future today. Paid non-client endorsement. Compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC and SEC registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/diaries.
Let Weight Loss Through Hers give you something to be excited about for 2025. You can spend the new year in control of your weight by losing up to an average of 9 pounds in your first month. Yes, those numbers are based on data by real Hers customers that have reported based on their personalized, compounded GLP-1 treatment plans. Hers is transforming women's healthcare by providing access to affordable weight loss treatment plans delivered straight to your door if prescribed. Hers also offers a holistic weight loss program with personalized solutions, including compounded GLP-1 weekly injections, which feature the same active ingredients as Ozempic and Wegovy, or other oral medication kits. After submitting an online intake form, a licensed medical provider will determine what plan is best for you. If prescribed, your program includes medication, ongoing care, and online support, all at one low cost. With that, weight loss plans are more affordable through Hers, with compound GLP-1 injections starting at $165 a month with a 12-month plan paid upfront for new subscribers, no hidden fees, and no membership fees. So if you've been struggling with your weight loss journey, it's time you find the best option that works for you through Hers. Start your initial free online visit today at forhers.com/diaries. That's forhers.com/diaries for your personalized weight loss treatment options. forhers.com/diaries. Hers weight loss is not available everywhere. Compounded products are not FDA approved or verified for safety, effectiveness, or quality. Prescription required. Restrictions apply. Wegovy and Ozempic are not compounded. Actual price depends on product and planned purchased.
Hi, I'm Amara Kofer, and I'm the host of the show Black Girl Gone. In this podcast, I tell the stories of missing and murdered Black women and women of color in America. Listen to Black Girl Gone on the iHeart app or wherever you get your podcasts.
The prosecution presented their case, saying that the killer was lying in wait for Scott and that the murder was personal. They said that Wynne was a criminal with dark thoughts and that he had been harassing his brother and sister-in-law since 2008. All because of the inequitable work expectations between him and Scott. The prosecution continued, saying that Wynne wanted to drive Scott and Kylie off the farm, and when that didn't work, he decided to plan Scott's murder. The prosecution said Wynne knew when Scott would be leaving his house, where the farm shotgun was, and he owned the dive boots that left tracks at the scene. They set out the means, motive, and opportunity. They also pointed to Wynne knowing Scott had been shot before anyone else. The neighbor who was first on scene, David, said on his 111 call that Scott's throat had been cut. However, Wynne had said that Scott had been shot. The prosecution said Wynne was overheard telling Scott's sister, Nikki, that Scott had been shot. They were all at the police cordon. And at that time, everyone who had seen the body, including the police, thought Scott's throat had been cut. The prosecution said, Wynne knew what killed Scott Guy before anyone else. He knew because he was the gunman. The defense pointed out that no one said that Wynne said Scott had been shot until after he was arrested. That didn't come up beforehand. The prosecution argued that Wynne could have hidden the bike and shotgun when he arrived back at the house, saying he could have cleaned the bike and put the shotgun back later when everyone was distracted. As for the puppies, Well, the prosecution said that Wynne either took the puppies with him right away or went back for them later to make it look like a puppy burglary gone wrong. They then argued that Wynne disposed of the puppies. However, I'd like to point out that there have been no signs of the puppies in the years since, and no remains were ever found. The defense took on each piece of evidence and dismantled it. There were 4 major red flags in the prosecution's case. Firstly, the defense couldn't make the timeline work. According to the prosecution, Scott was killed around 4:43 a.m. at the earliest. However, multiple ear witnesses say they heard shots closer to 5 a.m. And Wynne was back at his farmhouse by 5:02, proven by the alarm being turned off. Now, if we go back to the shots for just a second, we need to address that multiple ear witnesses heard 3 shots in quick succession. The defense said that while only 2 shotgun cartridge wads were found, the third could have been lost in the paddock, sunken into the mud, or stood on by one of the horses. Another thing to point out is that the farm shotgun wasn't capable of firing 3 shots quickly, whereas the murder weapon would have had to be a semi-automatic. And that's something that the farm shotgun wasn't. The defense had an American shooting champion testify, and he said that it would take him 7 seconds to reload the farm shotgun, and the ear witnesses didn't report hearing a gap between the second and third shot. Additionally, nothing tied the farm shotgun to Scott's murder. The third point the defense made was that the cars seen by farm worker Matthew were never identified. The defense couldn't believe police hadn't identified these cars, despite the tire tracks being left behind. One attorney told Stuff, "The only way you'd be on the road is if you knew of its existence and had some reason to be there. It's not State Highway 1. The defense didn't believe that the prints made by the dive boots in the mud belonged to Wynne. That's because the dive boots that he had owned, the ones that Anna said she threw out 4 years before the murder, were a size 9. The waves on the bottom of the boots that made the impressions in the mud were for a size 11 or even a 12, as indicated by the wave pattern on the bottom. There were 32 or 33 rows of waves in the prints left, but the pair of size 9 boots the defense brought into the courtroom only had 29 rows. But the defense didn't just poke holes in the prosecutor's argument. They brought up alternate suspects. The police had others on the suspect list. In fact, it was over 60 names long, and the defense narrowed the list down to 3 main people they thought the police should have looked into more. The first was the farm worker Derek. According to the Otago Daily Times, Derek didn't like Scott, and he complained about him to his sister. Derek did admit that he didn't always get along with his boss, but he didn't hate him. However, Derek told an acquaintance that Scott had made a lot of people angry, and he was actively seeking a new job. He even had a job interview the day before Scott's murder. Then at the trial, he said he didn't like milking and preferred to work with tractors. And after Scott's death, Derek stayed on at the farm and took on a manager role which required him to be out of the milking shed and working on tractors. Derek told someone that the one good thing to come out of Scott's death was that he, Derek, got to be working on tractors like he wanted. The people he lived with, his sister and his partner, were away when Scott was killed. So there's no one to confirm what time he left the house the morning of the murder. Another thing about the day of the murder, Derek called his partner and said that Scott had been shot. But when she asked how he knew that Scott had been shot, he said that Matthew, the other farm worker, told him. But Matthew said he didn't know himself until days later. And there were other things that made Derek look suspicious. For example, he owned a semi-automatic shotgun, and he got to work early on the morning of the murder, which wasn't really usual for him. When he was asked if he ever owned a pair of dive boots, he said no, although he did say he wore a size 12 shoe. Now, it's important to acknowledge that Derek wasn't the only alternate suspect the defense brought up. They also wanted to shed light on Andy. Again, this person has a name suppression, and this is a pseudonym. But shortly before midnight, the night before Scott was murdered, Andy committed a robbery and then traded the stolen items for 2 grams of meth. One of the items he stole was a pack of Winfield Gold cigarettes, the same type as the empty packet that was found at the crime scene. And 4 days before that, he had committed an aggravated robbery at a local service station. He owned 2 semi-automatic shotguns, and it was reported that he would become aggressive when he was under the influence of meth, which he was often. When Andy was interviewed by police, He said he was at home when Scott was killed, and his partner could provide an alibi. When the police spoke to his partner, she admitted that she was on meth at the time and couldn't be sure when he got home. But she did say it could have been around 4 a.m. Police cleared Andy as a suspect after speaking with his partner.
In addition to those 2 men who were known to the police, there was an unnamed man who was looking for Scott 2 weeks prior to his murder. This man is not unnamed because of his name suppression, but because he had never been identified. According to David, the neighbor, a tall, unshaven man with dark hair showed up at his door looking for Scott. Scott had lived at that address before David. The man, who smelled of alcohol and cigarettes, wasn't given Scott's new address, as David didn't feel comfortable sharing that information with him.
At the trial, the defense said that the others on the suspect list may or may not be connected. But this trial is about being certain. Can you say, I'm certain, I'm sure it was Wynne MacDonald? The defense hammered home the amount of reasonable doubt presented, saying there was an abundance of it, and saying that while there was no question that Scott and Wynne had their problems, and the vandalism crimes committed were ridiculous, shameful, and cowardly, they didn't hurt anyone. They called the connection between the vandalism and the murder false logic, and argued that Wynne would know that Callum could connect him to the previous crimes. The defense once again brought up the absence of any physical evidence tying Wynne to the crime. The boots hadn't been found, and Anna testified that she threw them out years prior. And anyway, they were the wrong size. Wynne's belongings were tested for hairs from the missing puppies, and that testing showed no evidence. No one could say if the farm shotgun had been moved from the day before the murder. As for what Wynne would gain from killing Scott, the answer wasn't much, if anything. Scott's share of the farm wouldn't go to him. He wouldn't benefit financially. Wynne actually had to step up and work even longer hours after Scott's murder. The jury deliberated for 11 hours. And on July 3rd, they found Wynne MacDonald not guilty of the murder of Scott Guy. Stuff reported that as the verdict was delivered, Kylie ran from the courtroom clutching Scott's cowboy hat, screaming, "He killed my husband," while Anna sobbed. Many were shocked by the verdict. The prosecution said that they would respect the decision, but didn't have any other suspects at the time. Brian spoke to the media after the verdict and said that while they were relieved the trial had come to an end, they were no closer to finding out who killed Scott. His wife was still a widow, and his children were still without their father, and there was still no one held accountable.
The court of public opinion had long decided their verdict in the case. Market research company UMR conducted an opinion poll after Wynne was acquitted. Only 20% of New Zealanders polled believed that the jury got the verdict right.
Wynne wasn't released upon the not guilty verdict, as he still had to be sentenced for the poaching and vandalism. Up until that point, the details of his crimes had been suppressed. In September, a sentencing hearing was held, and Wynne was sentenced to 5 years for the vandalism and poaching, but he was given credit for the 17 months he had already served. Also in September, Anna gave an interview to 60 Minutes, where she said that she wasn't convinced the jury got the verdict right, but she had accepted the decision. She said her marriage to Wynne was full of secrets and lies. In 2013, Kylie requested a coroner's inquest into Scott's murder. The coroner declined and said that they believed the police already found the culprit. So Kylie hired a private investigator, Mike Crawford. Mr. Crawford reviewed the police files and found that Scott had received phone calls the day before the murder, as well as one on the day of the killing. The caller is unknown, and there was no cell site data and subscriber details in Scott's phone. He did, however, find some other data on calls and texts received by Scott's phone, and he sent the details to an expert for analysis. But the results were inconclusive. Mr. Crawford noted that the 2 ponds on Beerburn were never searched. So he worked with the police to have them drained, but nothing related to the case was found. 18 months after Kylie hired Mike Crawford, her finances could no longer support the expense. Although he did some work on the case for free, he had to pay others to work with him, and Kylie couldn't afford to pay him or those others anymore. In that time, he didn't manage to uncover anything new about the case. Mr. Crawford told Stuff that he believes Scott's case is solvable, saying it's probably just missing 1 or 2 little pieces. Jo, Scott's mother, said she believes the truth will come out one day. But until there's new evidence, there's little point continuing the investigation privately. Jo said that she and Brian felt the police investigation was robust and thorough, and she hopes there will be another chapter of the story in the future, one where the case will be solved. In November of 2015, after being denied parole 4 times, Wynne was granted parole with 6 months left on his sentence. The parole came with very strict conditions, including an ankle monitor and a ban on contacting anyone in the Guy family. As for his relationship with the family, well, the Guy family doesn't intend to reconnect with Wynne at any stage in the future. With Brian telling Steph, because of the betrayal that he did against us and others, he really is not a part of our lives anymore. When Wynne's parole ended, he met and fell in love and eventually married his current wife in 2017. The pair settled in Christchurch and live a quiet life. 4 years later, in 2020, on the 10-year anniversary of Scott's murder, Wynne's defense attorney spoke to Steph. The attorney thinks that police ignored evidence that pointed at someone else once they found out about the vandalism. They said, once they found out about the other crimes he was involved in, I think they just closed the door. And after the trial, police simply shut the book and said that the jury got it wrong. We got it right. That's the end of it. We've got no continuing interest in this. The attorney said that he doesn't think Scott's murder will be solved because police simply aren't looking at alternate suspects. The prosecution have said to the Otago Daily Times that they wouldn't change anything, and they still think that Wynne is responsible. At the time of this recording, the case is open but inactive, with no detectives assigned to it. They haven't reviewed the investigation, and there don't appear to be any plans to. Anyone with information should contact New Zealand Crime Stoppers at 0800 555 111 or go to crimestoppers-nz.org.
Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, make sure you follow us on all of our socials at the Murder Diaries Pod and subscribe today for ad-free listening and special journal entries episodes. And until then,
Stay safe.
bye.
The search for truth never ends. Introducing June's Journey, a hidden object mobile game with a captivating story. Connect with friends, explore the roaring 20s, and enjoy thrilling activities and challenges while supporting environmental causes. After 7 years, the adventure continues with our immersive travels feature. Explore distant cultures and engage in exciting experiences. There's always something new to discover. Are you ready? Download June's Journey now on Android or iOS.